Hello, and welcome to New Beginnings podcast with Michelle and Beth. If you remember or recall last week, we started talking about relationships, in particular, marriage relationships. And this month of February, I know all people are all in love and doing everything and anything with respect to Valentine's and loving each other. We wanted to kind of hone in on relationships and understanding relationships. And we covered the concept of being able to communicate with each other. Beth Stiers here, she is a marriage counselor here in Indianapolis, Indiana. But we wanted to share with everyone all throughout the world things that we can do to help our relationships. New Beginnings podcast is all about enhancing our well-being, and we are considering it through relationships today or this month. And Beth has given us a really good ground on looking at communication as the key factor in which we need to learn and enhance to have our relationships be a better one. And today we talked about something called the family of origin. And we're going to break that down a little bit more for you this week and understand a little bit more about what is the family origin. So that question is for you.
All right. Family of origin is where you grew up and how you grew up. What is your family? So mom, dad, single parent. Single parent could have been because of death or sickness or divorce. Could be any number of things. You have also two-parent homes, and those two-parent homes give that role modeling just like other parents can, but hopefully a child will have a second person come along so you get a good balance between a mom and a dad, whether it be a grandparent or whether it be a grandmother that comes in and fulfills that role.
Okay.
But family of origin is how many siblings do you have? Where do you fit into that family? What kinds of things happen? And it is a necessary thing to have that family of origin and your growth in learning communication.
Yes. So like for me, I grew up with my both parents. I have two brothers, but I'm in the middle. Okay.
And for me, I grew up both parents, and I have a sister.
Okay.
I have an majorly extended family outside of that family of origin that were very helpful.
Okay.
My husband grew up in mom, dad, and two brothers, and he's the oldest.
Okay.
I'm the oldest.
Yes.
Of two, and so there were two girls, no boys. So
yes, my husband has three brothers, and he's the second in the family.
Okay.
But he grew up with his mom. He knows his dad and grew up, but the family was a broken family. Not saying that's bad. It's just a separated family. Let me use that's a better word to use. A separated family. So he's still related to both parents, but he lived mainly with his brothers and his mom.
Okay.
Okay. So we have two different origins right there, and I could see, and she's looking at me and smiling.
Because also you have cultural.
Yes.
And your cultural is different.
Yes.
And so you growing up in a different country and him growing up here, you have different beliefs.
Correct. So true. And the way we interpret things is different as well.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Oh boy.
Yes. And so when you're growing up, depending on, like for me, I'm the first of the two. And so you're always hearing how the first one gets special treatment or they're favored or something like that. Typically that's not exactly what's happening, but it looks that way. because they're the oldest, they can do things earlier than the next child down
Right.
because they've grown a little more than they have and they have a little more experience.
Right.
So, but it can also cause conflicts within the family if parents aren't able to kind of balance that.
Right.
And so there are many different aspects, such as my husband and I are both firstborns, which is not the best way to put a marriage together.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Typically, they will be at each other's throats most of the time, being
Yeah.
firstborns.
Okay.
But for me, I'm more the laid back firstborn, so I can go with the flow. My husband will go with the flow, but he is more of the independent. I'm going to be independent no matter what. I am independent, but I also can also be with people and do things, but he will hold back because he wants it perfect. And for me, I'm not that one that needs it perfect.
Right.
So those are characteristics of firstborns.
Yes.
And then you've got a middleborn.
Yes.
They're peacemakers. They're going to be more, I want things to go very smoothly. So if you grow up in a family where parents are arguing or they're upset with each other, and that role, that modeling is there that way, they're always constantly trying to make peace. So they try to make peace between their siblings and make peace between everyone else.
Okay.
They can also be a little bit manipulative and kind of work their way the way they want. So,
right. Because
they've
they're trying
seen
to balance
what
things
the
up.
first person got. If they got in trouble, I'm not going to get in trouble, but I can figure it out I can get away with it.
Get away with it. Got it.
So they have a way to do that. And then you have the youngest, who's the baby, and the baby a lot of times will be the protected one, or you want to make sure that they're taken care of, and they get used to that pattern, so they expect their spouse, whomever they marry, to still do that and take care of them.
That could be the same for a single kid.
Yes.
Oh boy.
An only child.
An only child.
Will actually have characteristics of that firstborn, and they will be typically very independent and outspoken, and it a lot of times will need to be their way because they haven't learned to, and it's not their fault, they just haven't learned to share real well. Right. Because they haven't had to. There's no reason why they had to share.
Okay.
I mean, their parents, they're not going to play with their toys unless they're playing with them, and then they're still going to, let them have the toy that they wanted.
Right.
So all of that growing up influences on our own behaviors and how we work with our own spouses and what we see from our family.
And we when we were discussing before, what about if you have a big gap in family?
Typically a gap of 5 years or more means you're starting a new family. So if, let's say, I'm born and then 7 years later, that is still a firstborn. It is not a baby, but it's a firstborn again.
Yes.
So you've got a wide gap. You may have children in between there, but if you let 5 years go in between there's that big gap. And and it also depends male, female.
Male, female, yes, yes.
And how you respond. So, So, like my parents, my father was the baby, my mother was the middle.
Okay.
And so they worked extremely well. I didn't see arguments. I didn't see fights. They did real well back and forth. And a lot of it was the way they grew up too. My mother's the middle, peacemaker, and my father was, we'll just wait and see how it goes. And but yet he would jump out there, but he would just make sure that
it's all right. It's all good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So,
okay, I get that. I'm just thinking back from my own family. My parents both have large families. They have a lot of brothers and sisters. So when you have large families, I think figuring out that, or if you're a part of a twin, because like I'm a part of a twin, my mom is a part of a twin, and then, but they were all so busy, but she's more of the independent. My dad is also independent as well, but he's the oldest too. He's the oldest in his family.
Okay.
Mommy's like middle in her family. So
And he may be one of those laid back.
Yes,
I don't know. He's more laid back on it. And
Mommy's the more, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get this done. but they work. They in sync. They work together.
They learned how to do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, I'm thinking also in my relationship, I am the second, technically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Part of a twin,
but you're the oldest of the twin.
But I'm the oldest of the twin. I have a big brother.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like my husband, he has a big brother, but he's a second.
Right. And so there are
But he has like 2 other brothers, so there's a difference, and that plays a huge role in how we communicate with each other.
Yes, it does.
I could see now as we're talking about this, I could see things coming up in my mind, like, oh, that's why he does this or why he does that. Okay.
That second or that middle child will kind of hold back, see what's going to happen. Could be the first child does that because the second child is more willing to step out there and try something. Can happen that way. It just depends. But there are more characteristics that relate to each birth order that you have.
And
so
if it's a boy or a girl.
Yes, and it's whether it's a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And we're talking only about a few.
Yes.
But there is a very good book out there, and it's called the Birth Order Book.
Birth Order. And who wrote this book?
Kevin Lehman, Birth Order. And he is a psychologist. He is a reality therapist, and he talks about how that birth order affects our communication, our lives, what we do. Okay. Maybe even where we choose to have our jobs. What kind of jobs? Things like that.
Okay, yes. And then you add to that cultures.
Yes, very much so.
You add to that cultures. For me, I'm from the Caribbean. Our culture is totally different than, I don't care what nobody say. It's different than the U.S. culture.
It is. And my daughter is married to a Ugandan man. And that's completely different also.
Yes.
Even though he can speak English, it's a broken English, and it's also a different type of English.
British,
it's a British
like
English.
I learned British English.
And so in his communication, there is a big difference there because he may think one thing and she's thinking another when she says it. So
so interpretation comes into play. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does.
So we are kind of stepping into the concept now of how does the family origin affects your as an individual in thinking.
Right.
How can it be healthy or unhealthy?
Yeah.
So can you break that down for us?
Okay, and some of it we were talking about. There are going to be unhealthy responses to things, such as if you have lost a parent and you didn't get to grieve the way maybe it would be most healthy for you. You may still be grieving when you get married or you start to communicate with your spouse. If you had a parent that was sick and you were a caretaker, then you may be one that is going to try to caretake with your spouse, which is not going to always be the best. Because you need to still have that individuality part of it. So abuse is a big one that can be in there, and those are just some that you have to work through first to be able to communicate well. Knowing yourself is going to help. Going to counseling is going to maybe help to understand what are some ways that you can develop to feel better about you, which makes you feel better about raising your child, helping your spouse, something like that. Yeah. And so those healthy things are going and trying to find someone to help you to work through that. Getting a balance of understanding what's going on. I know for me, we didn't hear yelling or anything. It was just, I heard you upset your mother, and it was like, oh my, if I upset my mother, then that's a problem. And that's all my father had to say. And, you know?
Right.
I was, okay. And I was very scared when he would say that.
Right.
But to someone else, it would be, who cares? And why would it matter I upset my mother? But
right.
that is something for me that would always scare me as a child. But we develop our personalities between 0 and 5 years old.
Uh-huh.
And so that is when that family of origin is extremely important to know and to learn that communication style. Even allowing the children to speak. I mean, you maybe have heard the phrase, well, I'll give you something to cry about, or there's no reason for you to cry. Well, that becomes stifling.
Right.
And so that's not a good thing. It's more of a, let's figure out why you're crying. I'm not saying they need to be coddled, but okay, well, you can cry. Let's just go to your room until you're done and then come back out and we can talk more about it. Or you just need to go to your room right now until you're feeling better. Those different types of things can be done with children, but in that communication, you need to explain what that reasoning is. Not just, I'm casting you out and go away.
Right.
So,
okay, so we looking at being able to balance relationships, or how we understand to communicate in a relationship. And based on our, for example, our family of origin, our birth order, the way we understand something influences the way we communicate.
That's right. It does.
Okay.
And think about also mealtime. Some people have meals together, some people don't. We're in a busy society.
Yes.
So in this busy society, we pick up food. We eat at different times.
Right.
That stability with that family of origin can come from sitting down together and hearing about your day, or talking through what's happening, talking about those feelings, or just learning about one another, playing games. Those kinds of things are really good to understand how you relate to someone else, or how your family of origin is where you fit in.
Right. That is good, people. I hope you're getting information here, because I'm writing. I'm learning a lot from this information. What would you consider to be a family origin healthy way of living? So what would you consider healthy?
Okay, healthy would be you communicate well, you can talk to each other. A child feels like they can go up to their parent and say, I'm upset about this, or what can I do about this? Will you help me? Or they can go to maybe a grandparent, or that person that has filled in for them as that parental figure.
Right.
So that they feel comfortable in doing that. Some children do not feel comfortable in doing that, either because, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we as parents have done something wrong.
No.
It just means that the child has seen something and kind of, whoa, that scared me. And it can happen at any time. And so, and an example that popped in my mind when you were asking that, my mother, I always thought she was scared of storms for years. So that made me very frightened of storms. And so she wasn't frightened of storms at all. Later on, I found out, maybe 10 years ago. She said, I stood at the window and watched the storms because I love to watch them and see them.
Okay.
But I wouldn't let you stand by the window, because if a tornado came or something came through the window, I didn't have time to get you away from the window and myself.
Right.
I never put that together as a child.
So as you concerned, mother first.
And so as a parent, she never thought about that.
Right.
And she just assumed, okay, well, I'm going to keep you over here to keep you safe. And in my mind, I'm scared because, well, I can't be with you, and I want to have you to be holding me, or whatever it might be. And
right.
But that wasn't in her mind at all. So we assume different things.
So this assumption.
We keep going back to the assumption. And so in our family of origin, that support from that parent is very, very specific and needs to be there.
Right.
And very healthy. So that's a healthy thing too.
Good.
For that, to have that parental support.
Okay, yes.
And training.
Yeah. So you touched on it. it turns out how you interpret it
Mm-hmm.
was not the interpretation at all. It was not
No.
even close to what your mom was thinking. She was trying to protect you,
Right.
versus you interpret it as, oh, storms are bad, I shouldn't be there.
Right. Exactly.
For all these years.
Yes.
So this we come back to the relationship. How one interprets something
Mm-hmm.
plays a huge role in understanding each other.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So you use that word that I pretty much don't like it, but it comes up every time. Assumptions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Even though we have assumptions, what is the best way to let somebody else know what exactly you're assuming, or how you
To
came
talk
up?
to them, to
Okay.
explain, to question. Questions are good.
Yes.
To be open and to be honest with them. For me, had I known as a child, I could have said, "What are you doing at the window?" And then my mother could have said that, but she didn't think of it, and I didn't either. So, it's not
right.
so.
Okay. So
you instead of assuming, talk to that person.
So find out what exactly is the reasoning behind the decision.
Right.
Okay.
And especially in different cultures, there are different reasons for a lot of different things.
Yes, that's true.
So we just, in our own culture, we assume you're going to do the same thing we did or have the same background. Not at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because that comes up a lot for me in terms of, I will be told, you know that, right? You know you need to take that light off, or you know that I was like, no, I don't. Why should I do this?
Mm-hmm.
So then it looks like I'm not very smart, but I just not understanding the reasoning behind it. You
right.
know?
It didn't happen in your family of origin, so
right.
why would it be something necessary now?
Right. So
you wouldn't think about it.
And how can I make it something? Like, how can it be a part of my current family to figure out how we could effectively get communication between each other, or get the desired goal that we're looking for.
Right.
Because I have a issue with the word assumption.
Sure.
I don't like assumptions because it plays to me it sounds negative. Yeah. Because then you're thinking that I know what you're thinking already. And I do it too. I realize as we're talking about it, I do it too. I assume that you understand me.
We all do it. Yes.
Yeah, but it's in truth and fact, no, I can't assume. I need to rein myself back and say, oh, did you understand what I'm talking about, or where I'm coming from with this?
Or ask, what is your thought on this? What is your belief?
Okay, yes.
Those are other questions. Instead of what we typically do is, well, you did this, so why did you do this? But instead, I don't understand your purpose in doing that.
Okay.
So could you explain it?
Right.
And so same thing with children. As they're learning to communicate, if they can communicate that way, that's more of a managerial style of learning to communicate.
Okay, yes. So asking questions is a big thing, to be able to understand why. And not assume. Okay. All right. So family of origin. It's important to understand where you fall in that regime.
That's right.
To put it, and where you fall as well as where your spouse is at.
Sure.
And then be able to understand, okay, when we look at that, how it has impacted our way of thinking. And then from there, consider healthy ways to ensure that when we create our new family of origin for our kids, what are some of the things that we can do to keep it healthy? And one of the main thing is communicating, but communicating so that you ask questions. Ask questions so that you can understand.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Not for this time.
Not for this time. Okay. So hope you get to replay this, listen in, write some notes down. If you need help, this is a time to get help in understanding your relationships.
Mhm.
If you need help and you realize that, oh my gosh, I am getting so many gems from this, and maybe I need help learning how to ask questions.
Mhm.
That's where the counselor comes in, right?
Right. Mhm.
That's where you want to set yourself up to be counseled. But I will go a step further, set it up so that you and your spouse can be counseled together,
Mhm.
so that we could understand where we're at and both,
Right.
so it wouldn't be so much like, oh, I'm getting counsel and I learning this, okay, you go get counsel now. I think it's becoming the point of both of us coming together
Right.
to be able to hear each other out
Mhm.
with a mediator.
Right. That's what it would be. Mhm.
and work from there.
Right.
To be able to learn from each other and grow.
Right.
Yay. All right, so
Okay.
this might be a new beginning for some. I know it's going to be one for me, because it does take a lot to be able to even come to this point of wanting to get counsel. You have to be humble to do
Right.
so.
Yes.
And one of the texts we considered for this topic today was Ephesians 4:32, which says, "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God, who forgive us." So we have to learn to be compassionate and
Mhm.
humble ourselves to be able to love each other.
Right.
Another one, I saw this quotation from George Bernard Shaw. It says, "If you cannot get rid of the family skeleton, aka for us, family origin, you may as well make it dance." So, how do you make it dance? You know what it is first. So you have to know
Right.
what your family origin is, and to make it dance, you have to learn your other partner's family origin and work together.
Correct.
So even though one person will have to go forward, somebody may have to go back. So we have to be able to
Mhm.
balance it off.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Mhm.
All right. So this has been our second episode on marriage, counseling, and relationship. We are coming back a third time to wrap it up. And this one, I think you would understand a little bit more of relationship and how we could build, healthy relationships. Thank you so much for listening in today. Keep enjoying I think this is Valentine's week, yes? So enjoy your Valentine's Day with your loved one, with your kids, because the kids are all into Valentine's as well. Have a blessed week, and we will see you again soon. God bless.